The imperial capital world of Valkur was a planet wrapped in steel. Its surface was covered in towering spires, shipyards, and defense platforms. At its heart was the Citadel, a mountain of black metal where the Emperor ruled. For the first time in living memory, the Citadel was silent. The great screens that usually showed the Empire's might were dark. The subspace channels, usually buzzing with 1,000 voices, emitted only a hollow static. The Empire had been cut off from itself. Inside the Citadel's war room, the atmosphere was cold with fear. Commander Vorik paced. The reports had stopped coming because there was no one left to send them. Kiran stood by a dead console, his earlier fear replaced by a numb certainty. He had been right. And being right meant the end of everything he knew. "They are coming here," Kiran said, his voice flat. "They have taken everything else. Now they will come for the head. Let them come." Vorik snarled, his pride boiling over. "We are not some fuel depot. We have the God's Lance. We will blast their ghost ships into real dust." The God's Lance was the Empire's final weapon. A planetary supercannon built into the crust of Valkur. It drew power from the planet's core. It could fire a beam of pure energy, capable of vaporizing a moon. It had never been used in war. It was a symbol of ultimate power. On the bridge of the human flagship, the moon was calm. Minji studied the scans of Valkur. Taiyang ran final checks. Jisoo watched, her hands clasped tightly. "The God's Lance is powering up," Taiyang reported. "Their planetary shields are at maximum. They are expecting a direct assault." "Good," Minji said. "They will look where we want them to look." She gave a series of quiet orders. In the Valkur command center, a sensor officer shouted. Multiple massive signatures, emerging from warp at the edge of the system. Dozens of them. It must be their entire fleet. On the main screen, a swarm of large, blocky signatures appeared. They were holding formation, a clear target. Vorak's face split into a grim smile. "Fools! They show themselves at last. Target the largest signature with the God's Lance." Full power. Fire. Deep within the planet, machinery older than nations awoke. Energy hotter than a star gathered. With a silent shockwave that made the planet itself tremble, the God's Lance fired. A column of blinding white light, wider than a city, lanced out from Valkur. It crossed the distance to the edge of the star system in a heartbeat. It struck the center of the largest human signature. The light faded. The sensor officers cheered. Then the cheers died. The target was still there. The massive signature hadn't even flickered. A tactical officer worked his controls, confused. The beam. It passed right through it. There's no energy dissipation, no heat signature. "It's not real. It's a hologram," Kiran whispered, the truth crashing down on him. A massive, perfect illusion to draw their fire, to make them reveal their weapon. Vorak's face went pale. "Then, where are they?" A new voice, calm and clear, echoed through every speaker in the Citadel, on every ship, on every world that still had power. It was Minji's voice. "Your weapon has been witnessed. Your authority is now revoked." Outside the viewing ports of the Citadel's high tower, the sky changed. The black of space shimmered, like a veil being pulled back. Against the backdrop of stars, the Ghost Fleet unveiled itself. Not at the edge of the system. They were here. Hundreds of silent angular ships hung in low orbit around Valkur itself. They had been there all along, hidden inside their own perfect cloaking fields, watching. They did not fire. They did not descend to bomb the cities. Instead, a low, resonant pulse began to emanate from the fleet. It was not a sound you could hear with ears. It was a vibration in the fabric of reality itself. In the Citadel's deepest vaults lay they, Imperial Archives crystal data spheres that contained everything. The history of conquests. The blueprints for every weapon. The genetic records of the ruling bloodlines. The maps of every secret world. The source code of their authority. As the pulse washed over the citadel, the crystals began to glow with a soft, internal light. Then, one by one, they dissolved. Not shattered. They turned into a fine, silvery mist that drifted away to nothing. Centuries of knowledge, of power, vanished in moments. On Varol battleships across the galaxy, the pulse reached their dormant warp cores. The exotic matter inside them destabilized, becoming inert stone. The great engines were now just lumps of dead rock. The ships were powerless, frozen tombs. The Empire did not fall in battle. It was erased from the records. It was unmade as a functional entity. In the silent war room, the main doors, which had been sealed for security, hissed open. Kiran and Vorak turned. Two figures walked in. Minji and Jisoo. They were not dressed as soldiers. They wore simple dark clothes. They were not followed by guards. Vorak reached for the energy pistol at his hip. It crumbled in his hand, the components fusing into a useless lump of plastic and metal. The resonant pulse had taken it too. Minji looked at them, her gaze resting finally on Kiran. "The tyranny is over," she said, her words simple and final. "The weapon that targets the helpless is gone. The ships that enforce your will are gone. The records that justified your rule are gone. You will govern yourselves now. Or you will not. That is no longer our concern." Kiran found his voice. What are you?" "We are the consequence," Minji said. "We are the answer to a question the galaxy should never have had to ask." She turned to leave. "Wait." Kiran called out, the strategist in him needing to understand. "What will you do now?" Minji paused at the door. "We will go back to the dark. We will watch, and we will hope, for the galaxy's sake, that you learn a better way." She and Jisoo left. Behind them, the Varol leaders stood in a room full of dead technology, under a sky full of silent, watching ships. The structure of their lives, their power, their very identity, had just been deleted. In orbit, Taiyang gave the order. The Ghost Fleet's ships began to shimmer. One by one, like ghosts at dawn, they faded from sight. The pulse stopped. The last of their energy signatures vanished from sensors. Within an hour, the sky over Valcour was empty. Just stars, as they had always been. The only proof any of it had happened was the silence. The silence of dead warships. The silence of missing data. The silence of an empire that was no longer there. The human fleet was gone. They had come from nowhere. They had done what they said they would do. And then they vanished back into the nowhere from which they came, leaving a galaxy free, stunned, and forever wondering about the quiet people who had waited in the dark. The Ghost Fleet began to move. There was no grand announcement, no declaration of war. Across the Varol Empire, things simply began to disappear. On the fringe mining colony of Zeta 7, the garrison commander was drinking his morning brew when the power went out. Not just the lights, everything. The hum of the air processors stopped. The gravity plates flickered, making his cup float for a second before clattering to the floor. He rushed to the window. Outside, under the orange sky, the massive orbital defense platform was hanging silent in the sky. Then, as he watched, it began to turn gray from one edge, like a piece of paper catching fire. The gray spread silently, and the entire platform, a structure that could house 1,000 soldiers, crumbled into a fine dust that scattered on the wind. Within a minute, it was gone. No attack ships were seen. No energy beams lit the sky. It just ceased to exist. At a key fuel depot in the void between stars, a Varol logistics officer, was monitoring a line of massive tanker ships. One moment, the tankers were there on his screen, their identifiers glowing green. The next, the identifiers winked out. One by one. He called them. No answer. He sent scout drones. The drones reached the coordinates and found nothing. Empty space. The tankers, and all the fuel inside them, had vanished without a trace. Deep in Imperial space, a battle group of 3 Varal cruisers was moving to reinforce a governor's world. They were traveling in warp, cutting a bright blue scar across space. Mid-jump, the lead cruiser's warp signature flattened. It was as if the blue scar was pinched off. The other 2 ships dropped out of warp, confused. They scanned. Nothing. The lead cruiser was gone, lost somewhere in the dimensional tunnel between stars. An impossible accident. Panic, slow and cold, began to seep into the Viral Empire. It was not the panic of battle, with clear enemies and explosions. It was the panic of a silent, invisible illness. Reports flooded the command network. A listening post gone. A relay station silent. A patrol ship missing. Always the same. No debris, no distress signal, no enemy contact. Kiran was at the center of the storm. His personal log file had grown into a massive datasheet. He mapped every loss, every disappearance. He fed the data into the tactical computer, asking for a pattern. The computer, designed to analyze fleet movements and battle strategies, was confused. There was no tactical pattern. The targets were not the strongest military points. They were not population centers, not then. Kiran saw it. He was not looking at a battle plan. He was looking at a dismantling. The targets were all logistical. Fuel, communication, command nodes, shipyards. The Empire was not being attacked. It was being taken apart, piece by piece, like a machine being unscrewed. He took his findings to his superior, Commander Vorik. Vorik was an old soldier, his skin lined and tough. He looked at Kiran's maps with disdain. Ghost stories and sensor failures, Vorik grunted. Pirates with new cloaking tech, perhaps. They strike and run. We will find them and crush them. With respect, Commander, Kiran said, his voice tense. Pirates cannot make a battle cruiser disappear in mid-warp. They cannot dismantle a Durasteel platform from orbit without being seen. The pattern is systemic. It is targeting our ability to function as a military entity. Vorik waved a hand. You are seeing shadows, strategist. The Empire is vast. We lose ships to anomalies all the time. Now, return to your duties. The High Command is more concerned with the pacification of the Concord remnants. Frustrated, Kiran returned to his station. He watched as the reports continued to come in. The silence was the worst part. No one claimed responsibility. No one demanded surrender. It was just a silent, steady vanishing. A new report flashed. The primary communications hub for the Spinward Marshes sector had gone silent. This was not a small outpost. This was a giant station that handled the data flow for 20 star systems. Kiran pulled up its last transmitted image. The station was there, floating in space. Then the image distorted strangely, like a reflection in a pond when a stone drops in. For a single frame, he saw dark, angular shapes superimposed around the station, like ghosts. Then the transmission ended. He had it. Proof, not just data, an image. He prepared a burst transmission directly to the High Command on the capital world, Val Kur. He attached the image, his analysis, the map of disappearances, all pointing back to the dead zone. He wrote a single, stark sentence. We are not facing an enemy. We are facing an erasure. He sent the transmission. He watched the status bar show it leaving his terminal, shooting through the subspace network. The bar froze. A new window opened on his screen. Words appeared, typed in simple, plain text in the common galactic language. Your analysis is correct, strategist Kiran, but you are too late. Kiran stared, his blood running cold. He tried to move. His terminal was locked. He tried to stand. The lights in the command center flickered and died, replaced by a dull red emergency glow. On the main viewing screen, the star field of space was visible. And then, against the black, he saw them. They simply appeared. One moment, space was empty. The next, 3 vast, angular ships hung just outside the station's viewports. They were so close he could see the rough texture of their black hulls. They had no glowing engines, no running lights, no weapon ports. They were just there, silent. Watching Dot on the bridge of the human command ship, Minji watched a feed of the Viral command center. She saw Kiran's face, pale with shock. Beside her, Tai Yang monitored the broader network. Their entire military communication grid is now under our control, he said. They are blind and deaf. Jisoo stood with them, having asked to see. She watched the frozen Varal officers on the screen. She felt no triumph, only a deep, solemn awe at the terrifying power of the Ghost Fleet. It was not violence. It was absolute, overwhelming control. On the Varal station, alarms began to blare. But no orders came. No reinforcements were called. The High Command did not answer. Across 1,000 worlds, Varar battleships sat in their docks, their systems unresponsive. Governors tried to send messages and received only silence. The great, noisy machine of the Empire had been muted. Kiran understood now, standing in the red dark of his failing command center. The enemy was not here to conquer their worlds. They did not want their cities or their people. They wanted the Empire itself to stop. And by taking its voice, by removing its limbs one piece at a time, they were making it stop. The 3 black ships outside the window did not fire. After a moment of perfect, dreadful silence, they shimmered and vanished, as if they had never been there. They left behind only a paralyzed station and a galaxy full of silent, stranded warships. The vanishing of the Empire had entered its final, quiet phase. There was nothing left to fight. Consciousness returned to Jisoo slowly. There was a soft, white light against her eyelids. There was sound a low, steady hum that vibrated in her bones, not the familiar rattle of her old scout ship. There was air, but it smelled different. Clean, with a faint hint of ozone and metal. She was lying on a firm surface. She was not dead. She opened her eyes. She was in a small, plain room. The walls were a smooth, gray material. There were no decorations. A single chair sat in the corner. A door with no handle seemed to be part of the wall. Her Concorde flight suit was gone, replaced by simple, comfortable gray clothes. Panic rose in her throat. Where was she? Who had her? As if sensing her thoughts, a section of the wall shimmered and became a doorway. A woman stepped through. She looked young, with dark hair tied back simply. Her face was calm, her eyes sharp and intelligent. She wore a simple black uniform with no badges or marks. "You are awake," the woman said. Her voice was clear, her accent unfamiliar, but the words were in the common galactic tone. "Your body shows no major injury. Dehydration and mild shock. Those have been treated. Who are you?" Jisoo asked, pushing herself up on her elbows. Her voice was a croak. "Where is this? Where is my ship?" "I am Minji. This is a medical bay on the vessel Steadfast. Your ship is in our hangar. It is. Beyond repair." Minji walked to the side of the bed. She did not smile, but her expression was not unkind. It was matter of fact. "You were pursued by a Varal destroyer into this sector." "It's gone," Jisoo said, the memory flooding back. The destroyer, it just vanished. Yes, Minji said simply. Did you do that? We did. The admission was so plain, so calm, that Jisoo could only stare. This woman, on this unknown ship, had just stated she had destroyed a Varal warship. Not just destroyed. Made it disappear. How? Who are you people? Minji tilted her head slightly. We are humanity. Or what remains of it that matters. Humanity. The word was a legend in the Concord. An ancient species mentioned in fragmentary records. They were said to be impulsive, emotional, brilliant, and violent. They had explored the stars early, then vanished. Most scholars believe a great disaster had wiped them out. A disease. A war. They were a cautionary tale. You're supposed to be extinct, Jisoo whispered. That was the plan, a new voice said. A man entered the room. He had a similar calmness to Minji, but his eyes held a flicker of something else, a restless energy. I am Taiyang, Minji's brother. We are not extinct. We are hidden. They explained it to her, there in that plain room. Centuries ago, when humanity first reached the stars, they saw the patterns. They saw the rise and fall of empires. They saw the Varal, even then, growing in power and cruelty. A great debate had torn humanity apart. One side wanted to join the galactic community, to fight, to ally. The other side, which won, proposed a different path. We could see the storm coming, Minji said, her hands folded in her lap. To meet it head-on would have meant our destruction, and likely the destruction of everyone around us. We were a passionate species. We would have fought until nothing was left. So we chose to disappear, Taiyang continued. He leaned against the wall. Not to run away. To wait. We pulled back from every colony, every outpost. We let the galaxy forget us. We used all our resources, all our science, all our will for a single project. We called it the Shepherd Protocol. We would build a fleet unlike any other. Not for conquest. For correction. Jisoo listened, her mind struggling to grasp the scale of it. A whole species, vanishing on purpose. Working in secret for hundreds of years. Correction of what? Of them, Minji said, nodding as if toward the distant Varal Empire. When they proved they could not change. When they proved they would consume everything. We have been watching. We have been waiting for the final proof. Their attack on your Concord. That was it. A peaceful alliance of traitors. They could not tolerate even that. They have shown their nature is absolute. Taiyang walked to the wall and touched it. It became a transparent window, looking out into space. Jisoo gasped. Outside, silhouetted against the faint light of distant nebulae, were ships. Dozens of them. Hundreds. They were enormous, blocky, and dark. They looked less like ships and more like floating fortresses or sharp, black mountains. They hung in the void in perfect, silent rows. No lights, no engine glow. They were terrifying in their stillness. The ghost fleet, Taiyang said softly. No faster-than-light signature. No energy bleed. Our weapons do not explode. They unravel atomic bonds. They turn matter into inert dust. We do not need to fight their fleet. We need to remove it. Jisoo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. This was not a navy. This was a surgical tool. You're going to war. No, Minji corrected, turning her calm eyes back to Jisoo. The Varal understand war. War is destruction for a goal. Conquest. This is not that. This is erasure. We will erase their ability to be an empire. We will vanish them. Meanwhile, light years away, Kiran sat in the Varal Command Center. He was reviewing the after-action reports from the Kala system. Total success. The Concorde resistance was eliminated. The pacification was proceeding. But one report was marked incomplete. A single scout ship, pursued by destroyer Caller's Breath, had fled into the dead zone. The destroyer had followed. Then, all contact was lost with the destroyer. Not just broken. Lost. Its signal had simply ceased to exist in the middle of a routine pursuit. A junior officer suggested a catastrophic engine failure, a singularity collapse. Kiran was not so sure. He requested the destroyer's last sensor logs. They were garbled, full of interference. But in the very last millisecond, there was an anomaly. A gravitational shadow, massive and dense, appearing right on top of the destroyer's position. Then nothing. He remembered his own reports. The sensor ghosts in the dead zone. The pattern that was not random. His stomach turned to ice. He pulled up a galactic map. He plotted the lost destroyer's last position. He overlaid it with the locations of the old, dismissed sensor anomalies. They formed a rough, quiet line leading deep into the dead zone. He opened a new file. This was not a report for his superior. This was a personal log. He needed to think. He typed the title, Analysis of Silent Phenomena and Potential Non-Viral Strategic Presence in Sector Theta Zero. His fingers trembled slightly. He had no proof, only a pattern in the silence, and a growing cold certainty that something had been watching them all along. Something that did not make noise. Something that made whole destroyers vanish. The Empire felt invincible. But Kiran, for the first time in his life, felt the faint, cold breath of fear. It was the fear of the unknown. It was the fear of something that moved in the dark you had ignored for too long. The Varel Empire did not declare war. To declare war, you must see your enemy as an equal. The Free Systems Concorde was not an equal. It was a collection of smaller species who traded with each other and shared stories of the old days before the Empire. They had small, slow ships and weapons that could barely scratch the paint of a Varel patrol ship. They were not a threat. They were a nuisance. The Empire decided to remove the nuisance. Scout pilot Jisoo of the Concorde was on a routine patrol near the fringe world of Kala when the sky turned purple. One moment, the stars were steady points of light. The next, 100 crescent-shaped warships dropped out of warp. Their hulls were a deep, dark metal. Their edges looked sharp enough to cut space itself. They moved in perfect, silent formation. Jisoo's heart pounded in her ears. Her small scout ship, the Dawn Runner, had no weapons. It was built for speed and quiet observation. "Command, this is Scout 7, she said, her voice tight. Multiple Varel capital-class signatures just emerged at the edge of the Kala system. They are forming a blockade vector. Static was her only reply. Then, a calm, bored voice from the lead Varel ship filled every Concorde channel. People of the Concorde, your independence is an error in the galaxy's order. Lay down your vessels. Disable your systems. You will be absorbed into the Imperial framework. Resist, and you will be corrected." Jisoo saw the first flashes. The Concorde's only defense frigate, the Brave Heart, moved to put itself between the Varel and the civilian station above Kala. It fired its pitiful plasma cannons. The bolts of energy splashed harmlessly against the lead Varel ship's shield, like water on stone. The Varel ship did not fire a cannon. It simply released a single shimmering pulse of silver light. The pulse touched the Brave Heart. Where it touched, the frigate's hull turned gray and crumbled into dust, silently and quickly. In 3 seconds, the ship was gone. No explosion. Just silent erasure. Panic erupted. Concorde ships turned to run. Jisoo shoved her own thrusters to full power, her hands shaking on the controls. The viral fleet moved. Silver pulses began to flicker across the dark like deadly fireflies. Each touch meant a vanishing. A cargo ship vanished. A medical vessel vanished. The civilian station's communication array dissolved into dust. The dead zone. A frantic voice cried over the emergency channel. Scatter and run for the dead zone. Their sensors are weak there. It was a desperate, stupid plan. The dead zone was a graveyard. Ships that went in never came out. They were said to get lost, their power fading in the endless dark. But staying meant being erased. Jisoo pointed the nose of the Dawn Runner away from the stars, away from the flashes of light, and toward the empty black patch on her navigational map. She pushed the engine beyond its safety limits. Behind her, she saw two other scout ships make the same choice before a silver pulse washed over them, and they were gone. A Varal destroyer, sleek and predatory, noticed her flight. It broke from the main formation and followed. It did not need to hurry. Jisoo's ship was fast for the Concorde, but it was a child's toy compared to the Varal warship. It followed her like a large, silent predator following a scared animal. Inside her cockpit, alarms began to sound. The engine was overheating. The stress of the wild escape was tearing her ship apart. The dead zone loomed ahead, a wall of nothingness. She crossed the invisible border. The stars behind her seemed to dim. The sensor screen filled with static. The comforting beep of the navigation system faded into a long, low hum. She was lost. The Varal destroyer followed her in. It moved more cautiously now, its powerful sensors sweeping the dark. Jisoo's ship sputtered. A final violent shudder ran through the hull, and the main engine died. All power went to life support, which could last for 2 days. She was adrift, floating in absolute silence. The only light came from her console, and the distant, faint shape of the Varal ship, turning to line up its final shot. This was it. She would be erased like all the others. No one would ever know what happened. Her family on the Concorde world of Huan would wait for a message that would never come. The Varal ship's weapons glowed with a soft silver light. Jisoo closed her eyes. Then space rippled dot. It was not an explosion. It was like watching water in a pond distort from a thrown stone. But the pond was the space between her ship and the Varal. The Varal destroyer's silhouette twisted and stretched for a second. As if seen through bad glass. Then, it was gone. Not blown up. Not turned to dust. Simply gone. One moment it was there, charging its weapon. The next, the patch of space where it had been was empty. No debris. No flash of light. Nothing. Jisoo stared, her breath frozen in her chest. What just happened? Had they left? Had she gone mad from fear? Her damaged sensors, in their last moment of function, caught something. A brief, impossible reading. For less than a second, before her power died completely, her passive scanners painted a shape. It was angular and flat, like a sharp piece of dark rock. It was massive. It was close. It had been right next to the Varal destroyer. Then the reading vanished, as if it had never been there. Darkness filled her cockpit. The consoles went black. The only sound was her own ragged breathing and the faint hiss of the air recycler. She was alone, floating in the silent dark, her mind racing. The Varal ship was gone. Something had taken it. Something that could hide from Varal sensors. Something that moved without a sound. She had run from one mystery into the heart of another. And as she sat in the cold, silent dark, she realized the Varal Empire might not be the most terrifying thing in the galaxy. The command center of the Val Empire was a place of quiet power. It hummed with a soft purple light. Giant screens showed maps of 1,000 conquered stars. Kieran sat before his own smaller screen. His job was to watch the edges of the Empire, the quiet places. For months, his sensors had picked up tiny whispers from the dead zone. The dead zone was a vast, empty part of space. It had no stars, no planets worth mining. The Empire's scientists had scanned it long ago and found nothing. They called it a galactic desert, but the whispers kept coming. Tiny energy blips. Not the loud, bright signature of a spaceship engine. More like the static from an old radio. Kieran had filed 17 reports about these blips. Each time, his superior, an older Varal with gray skin, had given the same answer. Sensor ghosts. Radiation echoes. Do not waste the High Command's time. So Kieran learned to ignore them. He turned his attention to more important things. He watched the Varal fleets move against new targets. He saw the beautiful, terrible flashes when a world surrendered. It was efficient. It was ordered not far away, in the heart of the dead zone. There was no light, no sound a normal ship could hear. Inside a large, ugly asteroid, a woman named Minji wiped sweat from her forehead. The air smelled of oil and cold metal. Around her, a city-sized shipyard was coming to life. It had been built in complete secrecy. Generations of humans had worked on it. They lived inside these asteroids, born and dying without ever seeing a sun. Minji checked the readings on her screen. The magnetic clamps were holding. Before her, in the vast construction dock, the skeleton of a new ship was taking shape. It did not look like the ships of the Ver-Al Empire. Those were sleek and sharp, meant to look powerful. This ship was all angles and flat planes, like a piece of broken stone. It was designed for one thing, not to be seen. Minji, a voice crackled in her earpiece. It was her brother, Taiyang. I'm taking the test pod out. Are the dampeners active? Yes, Minji said, typing a command. The energy dampening field is at 100%. You'll be a ghost out there. Good luck. Through a thick window, Minji saw a small, pod-like ship detach from the dock. It was painted a matte black. It moved silently, without the blue glow of normal thrusters. It used a different kind of physics. A physics the galaxy had forgotten. TAEYNG guided the pod away from the asteroid. His screens inside the cockpit were dark. Active sensors would give him away. He flew by instrument alone, by feeling. This was the final test. For decades, the humans here had developed a way to move without leaving a warp signature. The Varal and other species used faster-than-light engines that ripped a hole in space. It was fast, but it was like lighting a fire in a dark forest. Everyone could see it. Human technology was different. It folded space. It slipped between the layers of reality. It was slower than direct FTL, but it left no trace. You could not track it. You could not see it coming. For an hour, Taiyang flew patterns. He crossed the empty space where the Empire's long-range sensors were supposed to be watching. Back on the asteroid, Minji watched her own monitors. They were linked to hidden probes far away. The probes listened for any signal, any hint that the Empire had detected Taiyang's test. There was nothing. Only silence. Test complete, Taiyang said, a smile in his voice. They are blind. Back in the Varal command center, Kieran's screen flashed a soft yellow. An automated alert. It was about the dead zone again. This time, the sensor ghost was slightly different. A tiny pattern in the static. For a second, it almost looked organized. Kieran felt a small twist of doubt in his stomach. What if it was not an echo? What if something was out there, hiding in the emptiness? He opened a new report. He began to type. Anomaly pattern Delta 7 exhibits possible non-random structure. Request a deep scan probe to investigate. He looked at the words. He thought of his superior's tired face. He thought of being laughed at. He thought of the might of the Varal Empire. What could possibly hide from them? What could possibly threaten them? His finger hovered over the button to send the report. On the main screen, a glorious image appeared. The Fourth Fleet was celebrating the surrender of the Talari homeworld. Cities stood intact. The Talari people were kneeling. It was a clean victory. Order was spreading. Kiren deleted his report. He marked the anomaly as a confirmed sensor ghost, a result of stellar dust interference. He cleared the alert from his screen. The twist of doubt faded. The Empire was eternal. The dead zone was dead. There was nothing to fear. In the silent dark, Taiyang docked his pod. He climbed out and found his sister. They stood together, looking at the growing fleet in the dock. Hundreds of ships, each being built in secret. Each a silent blade. They still don't know, Taiyang said. They will, Minji replied, her voice quiet but firm. When we are ready, they will learn where we came from. And they will learn what happens to an empire that leaves no room for anyone else. She turned back to her screen. A countdown glowed softly. It was not a countdown to an attack. It was a countdown to a choice. The time when the hidden people would have to decide if the galaxy was worth saving from itself. Outside the asteroid, in the perfect black, a human fleet waited, silent and unseen.